This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
Folks come to you for that second opinion, and maybe they've been with somebody for, a long time, and their mom or their dad told them to go there, or their friend did, so they did. And now it might be time to start looking around to change to a different financial advisor, and you're looking for somebody to give you some answers here. Well, some of the common reasons why folks are looking for that second opinion or that second person is a couple things here. Your current advisor is retiring. Your current advisor fees are too high. Your portfolio performance isn't as strong as you like it. I think that'd be the most popular. And of course, you want comprehensive guidance that covers more areas. I'm talking about long-term care, estate planning, tax planning, those types of things. So, Mark, I'm sure within your decades of experience here, you've encountered this several times.
Oh, constantly. Matter of fact, that's the second most common statement that we hear from people who come to this class is, number one is, why didn't I hear this? I wish I had heard this 10, 20 years ago. But number two is, why didn't I? I've had an advisor during all this time. And so sometimes it's just a matter of recognizing that different advisors have different interests or specializations. And with that in mind, not everyone's a good fit. I mean, you need to find an advisor with whom you're compatible. And I know I'm not a good fit for everyone, but I do know that we're fundamentally different in our approach versus most financial advisory firms. And people pick up on that very quickly in the class. And it's a hard thing. I often use the example, or at least in the last year or so, I was quite sick with COVID. I have what they call long COVID. It about killed me. In 2022, I was in bed for 75% of the year. It was really bizarre. And I'm still dealing with the long-term effects of that. And the reason I point this out is that throughout that experience, I had a wonderful doctor, just the nicest guy you could ever meet. I mean, he looked like Opie. He looked like he's 12 years old. He's got 10 kids, though. He's just a really energetic young guy. But he wasn't hearing me. And he recognized that when my wife showed up at an appointment. He said, uh-oh. Well, long story short, I ended up having to find a different doctor. There was a homeopathic doctor here in Las Vegas, Terry Fowl, wonderful man, genius. And I believe the man saved my life. I'm functioning again. But the reality was that the first guy wasn't hearing me. He wasn't listening. He wanted to blame everything on my diabetes and that maybe I was bad behavior, yada, yada, yada. He wasn't hearing me and did not believe that I was really as sick as I was. I'd come in smiling to the appointment. But anyway, I had to change doctors, and it literally saved my life. And sometimes it's like that for people who are dealing with financial advisors. They have to make a change to save their financial life. They just have been in this quote unquote wealth management mode where all the advisor's looking to do is get them 1% greater return. But the truth is, who cares if you got 1% greater return if you're going to lose it all, because there was no health care planning, no long-term care planning, for example. There was no risk management on the investments. And so the big pitch with most financial advisory firms is, yeah, we can get you 1 or 2% greater return. And as I said, that really should not be the priority. So we just invite people to come on in. We do a free consultation for folks to get a feel for us. We call it the good fit meeting because it needs to be a good fit both ways. I'm not a good fit for everyone, and not everyone's a good fit for me. And we get a good sense of that during that first conversation. But at the very least, what happens is people leave with a new perspective on their finances and some new ideas. So they'll have a new friend and they'll have some new ideas, even if we don't work together.
There was a recent survey that shows that Americans don't expect to work beyond their early 60s. They're looking at giving up their full-time paycheck at around the age of 62. Here's Yahoo Finance Carrie Hannon and what she thinks about this, calling it a terrible idea.
Unless you absolutely can't continue working because of a physical issue or you can't get a job because of ageism. And that's very real. But, it's a bad idea because in a sense that they have medical bills. If you leave at 62, you still have to foot your medical bills until 65 when Medicare kicks in. And even then, Medicare doesn't cover a lot of things. People are mistaken there. So I think people don't factor in some of these things like inflation. And then, of course, longevity. We are living longer lives.
Absolutely, we are. And, Mark, it got me thinking here. If someone comes to you saying, all right, the only reason I'm holding back to, from retirement is because of healthcare coverage, how can you help? What kind of other opportunities are there?
Well, there's certainly private health insurance plans they can get on the private exchange, and that's not life ending. I personally carry a plan like that. It costs me $1,300 a month for my wife and me, and that's not cheap, of course, but some people are willing to pay that. But I always caution people who are in a rush to get out of the workforce because It's easier to get out of something than it is to get back in often. And certainly that's the case with the workforce. A lot of people are retiring at 62. The majority of people are taking Social Security at age 62. I think a lot of it just has to do with, there's frustration or boredom or just a sense of burnout. And we're finding increasingly that employers are more open-minded to offering alternatives here. It may be a phase down of a schedule. And I think that's actually a healthier approach, where you can kind of dabble, as it were, or try retirement, as it were, because there's so many issues we got to figure out. I mean, it's not just if you've saved enough, but more specifically, do you have enough guaranteed income sources to cover your basic needs? And so that there's never a question on that. Do you have a long-term care plan in place in addition to that Medicare kind of plan? Have you done the tax planning to make sure that as much of your income in retirement is tax-free as possible? There's preparatory steps to get to that point, and it's not an overnight process for most people. It can be 3 to 5 year kind of planning. And so again, it's easy to jump out, harder to get back in. But the biggest question isn't the financial question. In my view, it's actually, how are you going to spend your days? Initially, it feels like vacation and people are excited to get out. But after a few weeks or few months, it doesn't feel like vacation anymore. And suddenly there's boredom and just frustration. People have lost their social structure. And so again, it's easier to get out than it is to get back in. And so we caution people about jumping directly. Have some kind of transition plan. Maybe you want to transition to a different kind of work that feeds your heart, feeds your soul more than your wallet. And if you've got some basic income in place, some good savings, we see a lot of people who kind of have a second or encore career where they go out into the nonprofit communities and they do things that are meaningful to them, that, again, kind of feeds the soul, as it were. And you have to have purpose like that. We can't just jump off the ship, as it were, and expect to, just to have roses and unicorns, as they say. It's just not that simple.
I tell you what, another item when it comes to planning for your retirement that is not cookie cutter is Social Security. We have talked plenty of times about waiting to claim Social Security because it basically is going to result in, a bigger monthly paycheck from the government if you wait those extra couple years. But personal finance radio host Dave Ramsey, this is his idea. He says, take Social Security benefits at the earliest possible age of 62 and then take all that and invest that money into a mutual fund. He claims that will more than make up for the extra money that you would be getting included in your checks if you had waited to claim at that later date. So is this solid advice?
I think it's a little simplistic, like a lot of the things that come from these media gurus. They talk as if a one-size shoe fits everyone. I think Dave Ramsey's incredibly good at debt management. Kind of wish he'd stick to that. But on this Social Security issue, there's a lot of considerations, and the mathematical consideration is only one. I mean, mathematically speaking, the longer we delay claiming, the better off we'll be in terms of a higher payout, and the simple fact that Social Security is not entirely taxable. Only a portion of it is taxable. And he doesn't touch on that, and that's a material issue. So many people choose to wait until their full retirement age, which is typically 66 or more commonly 67 now. But if they wait until age 70, they've got a guaranteed increase, which is hard to match in the private marketplace when we're talking about guaranteed income sources. So yes, it's possible, it's conceivable that you might be able to do better in the market. But one of the things he doesn't touch on is if you're still working prior to your full retirement age, you're not going to get your full Social Security benefit. There's actually a holdback of a portion of those benefits up until your full retirement age. So when I say his advice is a little simplistic, I don't mean to be rude, but there just are other considerations beyond simply investing the money and having it magically turn out better, because there's no guarantees in the market, and certainly not in the way that he's recommending that people invest. But that's the mathematical side, is that you get a higher payout if you wait. The practical side is that if you are fully retired at age 62 and you delay claiming, then you're going to have to live off of your investable assets. And to the degree you live off of those are no longer available to transfer to your children and grandchildren as an inheritance. And so there's some non-financial kind of practical considerations that have to come into play. And so sometimes we'll show a mathematical ideal and people will do something entirely different for practical reasons, because none of us live our lives for purely mathematical reasons. And so we just got to look at the whole situation. It's a very, very personal and customized situation we've got to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. That customizable situation, you mentioned it earlier. You know, some folks go about planning for finances in like the Cinderella story, right? It is not a one size, fits all. It's just like the story in Cinderella, right? You got to find the right fit for you. And we've talked about this before, taking guaranteed money, like he's saying, take it at 62, take that guaranteed money that's guaranteed to go in your pocket and then throw it into a mutual fund and hope that it works the best, versus kind of holding steady, using maybe different other streams of income while you're holding out from 62 to 70, which would give you that 8% guaranteed growth. There's also a risk versus reward factor there too, right?
No, absolutely there is. Again, there's no guarantees in the market. So it really just depends on what a family's goals are. If I'm talking to a single man who has no dependents, then the considerations are entirely different than when I'm talking to a widowed woman with children, where we primarily have to look at her income and then, are there legacy goals? And often there are with their children and grandchildren. So again, it's not a size 10 fits everyone kind of answer.
Sure. And this is, again, Social Security is something that is part of a contentious conversation as well. As you look, you've worked so hard, you're putting money into it. Is it going to be diminished? They keep throwing the either 2033 or 2035 around. Is it going to be diminished? Is it going to be there? That's also another conversation. And I think that, Mark, you would agree with me as we talked about it over the weeks that Social Security, yes, you've been paying into it. So should you get paid out of it? Absolutely. That should happen. Should you rely on it 100% for your retirement? Absolutely not. I'm going to go on a limb and say, would you agree?
Absolutely. I agree with that. We can't depend just on it. It's number one, it's insufficient for most people's needs. But number two, there is this concern about a reduction in benefits down the road. I'm less concerned about that for people over the age of 50, because typically when changes are discussed, it's for people under the age of 50. But we don't want to rely on any one source for anything. I mean, we've just got to have multiple streams of income to have the security that we both want and need in the future.
We're talking about, of course, creating different streams of income, guaranteed income being a huge conversation. One way to get guaranteed income is from the A word of retirement planning and annuity. So the question is, when does an annuity make sense? Well, there is a recent article that says while annuities aren't right for everybody, you should consider them if you fall into one of these three categories. Number one, your spending is high relative to the assets you've saved. Number two, you want income from guaranteed sources. Number three, the idea of guaranteed income gives you that peace of mind. So, Mark, doesn't that describe most people that you work with that walk through that door?
Oh, absolutely. As people approach retirement, they tend to go into a preservation mindset. And so there's two things that annuities do uniquely well. One is they can help us kind of de-risk a portfolio to safely grow money. But the other is it can create an income stream that you can never outlive. And that has enormous psychological benefits as well as the obvious financial benefits. We can typically pull multiples, a couple times the income off of an annuity that we can pull off of a mutual fund or a variable portfolio. And we can do that with security. And so, as for me, I periodically, at least once a year, I will go into my accounts and I'll sweep money out of my market-based investments into more principal protected alternatives, such as annuities. I own 5 annuities now. I'll own more before I fully retire. But I do that because preservation is a key desire for people who have spent their lifetime accumulating, and now they don't have time to recover. And that becomes very clear to people as they approach the finish line, as it were, to transition into retirement, is that the one thing we don't have anymore is time.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.